Okay, this is psychedelic journey number 7. It was on LSD, and it's the only time I've tried LSD, and it was a horrendous experience. For each of my journeys, at some time or other, I've always had a notebook handy to write in, and quite often for the bulk of it you can't write, but usually it's somewhere near the end and you're just starting to come down and you can start to scratch out some words. On occasion it's in the middle, but it's extremely hard to read unless you know what was written. And but it becomes clearer, and that's the source of most of this material in all these stories, but in very bold letters. I had written and underlined, exclamation mark, never do this again, never do this again, as a message to my future self. So that gives you a little bit of the gravity of the emotion. You know, there's a scale to these experiences that it just does not translate. You can say it was like this times 10 or times 100 or times 1,000 or times 1,000,000, and there's something lacking in that way of speaking that can get to the core of it. But it was a very, very difficult journey. All sense of self was just completely blasted away, which in itself isn't at all a challenging thing. Pretty much all my trips I've taken of these high doses, your self sort of disintegrates. You know, there's these tenuous threads window back into this universe, but as a general rule, yourself gets blown away. But in this case, this happened too, but it's kind of a different flavor. It's a sort of a psychotic break that just goes deeper and deeper, and there's just absolutely no reality testing. You can't tell what's up from down. You can't tell a meter from a kilometer from 1,000,000,000 kilometers. You can't tell the difference between a minute and 1,000,000,000 years. It's just, there's just nothing to grasp onto. There's just nothing to get your bearings. There's just nothing of which you kind of get a sense of what's up, what's down. It's just this deep sense. I was going to use the word loss, but again, there's this oddness in that kind of this self who would possess such things isn't there. And so it's more like there's this universe which is just a pure hurricane universe or something. And you are it, and all there is to do is to experience it. All there is to do is experience it. There's no hint whatsoever of changing this, of pleading for it to end. There's no one to plead, and there's no one to plead to. It's just an unimaginable torrent of strain, and very dark. And yeah, I remember the motion of it when I wrote that note to myself, just extremely strong. And it was quite a while before I had the bravery to have another psychedelic experience after this. You know, all these stories I'm saying occurred over a span of, I'm not quite sure exactly, maybe 8 years. But probably this was the biggest span at the end of this one to the next one. It might have been a year and a half or something before I got up the courage to do such a thing again. So I'm in the middle of this massive incoherence, this not being able to make sense of anything, but you're just pure emotion itself. And there's this, again, one of the things you have no reference for is time. And this happened to me repeatedly again and again. And so you can't tell the difference between a million years and a minute. It just, they feel one and the same, meaning a minute may pass and there's just an uncounted duration of time it feels you have endured. And I remember very much, you kind of just, your eyes focus, and I look at the clock and it's something like 8:35, in the morning, 8:35, or in the evening. I think I did this one in the evening. 8:35, and then and then you're lost again. You're lost in this torrent of torture and just anguish or something. I don't really know quite the word is, but it's kind of a horrible sensation, horrible feeling, horrible existencing, horrible experiencing. And it just goes on and on and on and on. There's no pleading. There's just right away you're pushed through the floor, through rock bottom. I was speaking previously on these ideas of acceptance, and they're just kind of going deeper and deeper. This is just, you're just thrust into this completely different dimension of acceptance, and then sort of my eyes focus again, and it's kind of like you just have this brief grasping or gasping for air, so to speak, and it's kind of like, okay, it's got to be, I come back to this situation here in this universe, and I kind of remember, oh yeah, I've taken LSD. It's got to be like 3 or 4 hours later. Like this is bananas. And before I looked at the clock, it was 8:35, and now I just look at the clock, and it's like 8:37. So it's like maybe 2 or 3 minutes has passed, and it's like, holy cow! You have hours in this time, in this reference point. You have hours and hours of this to go, and you just experienced 2 minutes of it, and it was an eternity of suffering. And I don't wish this on anyone. And it's whenever I speak of these things or speak of the positive benefits, mental health benefits that these experiences can have, I don't know how to double underline or to prepare anyone for these other sort of very difficult circumstance, other than to learn enough about it that there's really a deep-rooted trust in the process. I think this is the one thing that keeps a person from going insane in these kind of situations. Somehow, inarticulately, I'm familiar enough with these experiences. I grew my own mushrooms in many cases, and spent a lot of time kind of very, in an interesting way, curious way, learning about this whole realm. And so this deep, I have developed a deep trust in the process. So even these extremely dark experiences, there's basically a knowing, that phrase I gave before, eternities. I've learned that even eternities come to an end. There is no such thing as just an ongoing unchangingness. This includes happy moments, but it includes these very challenging moments too. There's no such thing as those things just enduring, enduring, enduring. They can go for a very long time. You can experience a very long time. But I have experienced in multiple occasions these eternities coming to an end. And so it did with this very challenging experience, this experience of which all reality testing was just blown away, and every iota of myself was just blown away again and again and again and again. And so, this is, people call bad trips. And this would be very classically a bad trip. But if you kind of understand the whole mode of these things, even these things can be very, very rewarding psychologically. And even now, I feel very, I'm not sure what the word is, calm in my heart, having gone through this sort of thing. There's sort of, I was going to say the word resilient, but that almost sounds too personal. It's sort of a resilience and a trust in a kind of an everything, every wayness way, of which I'm a part of this environment. It's kind of maybe those are vague descriptions, but it's like, I remember I've gone through this, I remember the experience of those emotions, and it's kind of like, oh, what can touch me now? What can touch me now? And, I still go about my normal life and find frustrations and disappointments and so on. But there's this context sort of in the back of my mind. It's kind of like, it's okay. It's okay. You're having, even just in our normal experiences, we can experience extremely difficult circumstance. And in some cases, you see yourself to the other side, and it makes you a more confident, stronger person. And so that's what this is to me. And it's odd to say, I wouldn't wish this on anyone, but I have an odd sort of gratefulness for having this experience. And much of the challenge of the circumstance, I think, had to do with the set and setting. This was the one psychedelic journey I was probably poorest prepared for in many dimensions. Maybe I was a little bit overconfident in the whole circumstance. And so it's just another nod to just taking care, and the circumstance, the setting you're in, it really can matter a lot. The whole context, you can't control these circumstances or these experiences you have, but you can really sort of increase the odds quite a bit in them tending towards kind of more happy experiences, although even in those there can be mixed things. But at least you're mentally prepared to sort of take anything that comes at you and find some psychological strength within them, some self-understanding, coming to see yourself and being okay with it. My one daughter sent me a little message from someone who said, you take these psychological journeys and you become one with God, whatever that is. It's a God of benevolence, it's a God of storm and fury, whatever that is. You come one with it, and then what you take away from after that is like, it's okay, bud, be yourself, be yourself. It's a kind of a paradoxical message, but it rings true for me. But At the time, maybe I wasn't so grateful coming out of it. Oh, I just remember this one thing, this aspect about the time, following the time, 8:35 to 8:37, an eternity. And then next time I check the clock, it's like 8:45 and then 8:49. It's just taking forever, forever. And I had this mantra that kind of stuck in my head. It's kind of like approaching 9, approaching 9. And it just gave me a lot of courage and hope. It's kind of like, this is taking forever, but I do see that we're approaching 9. And then when I would check the clock at some point, it was like 9:07 or something. It was just like, okay, there's such a relief here. There's this relief of change. I can endure multiple eternities, and kind of the whole psyche was just anchored to seeing, even if this is an eternity, I can see the change. And so it's just like I go through an eternity approaching 10, and you reach 10, and it's like approaching 11, and I reach 11. And whatever it was, till the next morning. And it was just, I remember coming down from this, and I might have got the time mixed up. I think I started 10 or 11 the night before, but it was in the morning time when I was approaching 8 o'clock. I think that was the real kicker, and my family was getting up, and the idea of approaching 8, I could see it coming, and 8 o'clock hit, and it just in the morning, and this experience was kind of winding down, and I was just washed over with so much emotion. I guess that's what these kind of experiences can do too. There's so much cathartic relief and release and gratitude for just this here, however it is. It doesn't matter. Describe it however you want. But there's just so much gratitude to life, just as it is. And it's a very strong context in my mind, even now.